look at out there what's said about your company and about your client's company, and not just trying to generate new content, but also clean up what's already out there. I'm Dani Leitner, and this is SEO in 2026.
Dani, what's your number one SEO tip for 2026?
A really easy one. Clean up your online presence. AI sees everything.
Well, maybe it's easy to articulate, but it's not necessarily easy to implement. So how do you actually find the elements that AI sees that you don't want it to see?
Well, testing a lot. I'm actually doing a lot of AI research, like asking AI 100 times about my company. And then you find out like, well, where do he actually gets the information from? And then you find things you were like, well, I didn't know that this exists still. Maybe I should look into that.
Okay, that's a great way to do it. And instead of manually searching for everything and trying to figure it out yourself, just asking AI itself, where did you come up with this? And then you've got an opportunity to correct it, of course, as well. So are we talking about trying this with lots of different AIs? Because I would imagine different AIs are finding different things in different places.
Yes, and many times. So it's not just trying to... I mean, you can also like do a backlink audit and see where the backlinks are coming from. Then you might find things you don't want. But with AI, it's often mentions and where it looks at. For example, on my website, I was doing some tests where I was asking ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude, every tool, the same question about me, about my offering, about my prices. And it's really fascinating. In this case, he got most of the information from my website, obviously. But I have my website in 3 languages. So I actually found out that there are some information on the English websites that I don't have on the German websites that I corrected, that I changed. And then it's just like searching like, well, where did he get this information from? That's not anymore the information he should get. And then you find, well, it's on the Spanish-speaking website. I haven't talked about that. So even on your website, but also on other websites where you could have like a bio of yourself and say like, well, that's not what I'm doing at the moment. That's not the company I'm working anymore for. Maybe I should ask them to change it.
So obviously there's the law of ever decreasing returns, and you can't do something forever. You mentioned 3 AI search engines, ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude. Are those the 3 main ones that you focus on for this?
To be honest, Claude, not so much. That was just an experiment, but I would focus on ChatGPT at the moment because it's the most used. If you're not in Europe on AI mode, obviously, which in Europe is still not available, except UK, I think. In UK, I think it is available.
Yeah, it's available in the UK.
Then Perplexity, because it's also a search engine and not like ChatGPT, just an LLM. It's really searching. So there you get different input as well sometimes.
Okay, so that's 2 decent, 3 decent ideas, I guess. ChatGPT, Perplexity, and AI mode if it's available in your country. So do that to begin with. And what kind of questions do you ask to bring up the content that you're looking for?
Anything that comes to your mind to ask about your company or your client's company. This would be like the standard things are, think about what would a user ask. I find your company and ask, what is it about? Who is working there? How big it is? What's the offering? What are the prices? How do they work? Things like this. Because sometimes I think that's really interesting if you find things, like I said before, that's written on the website and maybe it's not accurate anymore. Like some processes. We always do a kickoff meeting, this call, then this, and this. And then you look at it from a company perspective and think like, no, we don't do this anymore. Where is this written?
So who should be responsible for this? Is this completely an SEO's job? Should there be some brand team that does this? Is there a reputation management team that should do this?
I think almost everyone that has some specific task in the company, like the SEO. From an SEO perspective, what I would do is see what's linked from other websites. What do other websites say about the companies? Because that's where my work is. And then from the perspective of like the offering or the processes or anything, that would be the work maybe of the sales team to see like what are the things that we have written on the website about the process. Is this like we do it or is it not like we do it? The offering might be a special department, because maybe the marketing team in a company, if it's a bigger one, doesn't know every offering exactly how it's offered or how it's done or what it's about. They just have the overall picture. So maybe it's really the person that's working in the department that's doing the stuff that needs to watch a little bit about how are we actually appearing in AI.
So there's one thing discovering what's being said about your brand and what's being spewed up by these different AI engines. But there's another thing that is getting rid of this content, and there's another thing getting the AI engines to actually feature different content instead. So maybe the next step, how do you actually get rid of the content that it is consuming?
Well, if it's on your own website, it's easy, no?
Yeah.
Easy.
Okay. Hopefully.
Hopefully, yeah. Not always that easy, because maybe you need to ask a web designer, you need to ask some other person to do it because you don't have access. So easy, depending on your website. If it's on a different website, obviously it's like when you get like the typical backlink trick, you search where you get mentioned and don't have a link and ask them, well, you mentioned me, could you link to my website? So it's like, hopefully, please change your website. But you need to contact them. That's the first step, to see like, well, where do I actually get mentioned? Try to contact, like I said, if you wrote a guest article and the bio is not accurate anymore, you maybe still have the contact person for the guest post and write them, hey, I found some error in the bio. Could you change it? I changed company or something like that. Then there are things, obviously, that are a little bit harder. For example, which I saw for a lot of clients, reviews on review pages. AI is using a lot of these review pages or Reddit or some information where a user gave some opinion. And if you have a bad opinion there, it's not very easy to ask this person, I know you hate my company, but would you delete your comment? Might not happen. So in this case, you need to produce better content or more content. In this case, asking your best clients for reviews, asking another client again for reviews. That often I'm working a lot with small and medium-sized companies, and they completely forget about this to ask their clients, could you review my company? And then the only people that review your company are the people that are not happy with your offering. And then maybe it really helps to just ask anyone you know, please, we work together. I think you were happy. Could you make me a review? And then get more good content than bad content on there.
On there? Do you mean on your website by there? Or how do you actually determine the best places for these reviews to be published?
That depends a lot on the niche you're in. That's why I said on there. Because typical is Google My Business Profile. No, if you have one, and if local SEO is important, it should be on there. But then there are a lot of reviewing pages, like for software, you have the Capterra and other websites where they actually compare websites and you can make comments. Or you have, I'm not sure if it's just a German one, Trustpilot is really typical for online shops in the German-speaking country. And if you have your company there and it's the main thing where your niche is looking for recommendation, you should have it on there.
Got you. Okay, so you should know your industry. You should know which review sites are most relevant to your particular industry.
Yeah, definitely.
And you say that AI can find content in many different areas that you didn't even consider. Obviously, things like subdomains that you forgot that existed in your website, other platforms, old job listings as well. So there are so many different places to look.
Yes. Job listing is a good thing as well, because people always forget things that they put out there and just left there. Or also maybe your LinkedIn profile. If you have a personal brand and you wrote something years ago, which you changed opinion on, maybe you should, in this case, you can delete it, or you could make an updated post about it and say, I changed my opinion on that.
Now, you also say that you don't necessarily have to just use AI to find what AI knows about you. You can also discover what's happening on Google, and then obviously a lot of AI search engines will probably grow other search engines for content as well. So what's the final step really that you will take on Google to try and determine that whether or not content exists that you don't necessarily want?
Well, here a backlink analysis is really valuable. Something we did for a long time now, looking where do we get backlinks. and maybe look into where these backlinks are coming from. We're doing SEO already for 10, 15 years. For sure, you have some links where you wrote a guest post, which you're not really... Well, it was just about the link. No, nobody will read the guest post in the end. And suddenly, maybe someone would read it. So the backlink audit for things, to find things that out there in the internet is really a great option. And on Google, well, Googling your own brand, not just looking at the first page, looking at the second, third, seventh, 10th page. Maybe you find something, just clicking through and look a little bit about what's your brand doing out there and how Google understands your brand. Because that's really interesting as well. I have, for example, a client that's an e-commerce website. And they have the company that's registered and 3 brands, which are 3 online shops with different products. And Google doesn't understand the connection between the online shop and the main company. And you see that in the shopping tab when they use the brand or the company name. You can ask there, well, give me more information about them. Where did you get this information from? And then you look at that and it gets information from the competition. It's just, well, Google is not understanding how these 3 websites and the company come together. So maybe we should clean up the company website, the connection between the websites, the LinkedIn profile where we say like, well, that's the company and that's the brands we have and everything there.
So what would you say to a stakeholder in a business that says, look, AI search is the hot thing, but it's not necessarily where any of our audience comes from. Look at the stats. There are so many referred visitors from Google, but AI brings in hardly anything, so it's not worthwhile at the moment spending any time on it.
Well, we're not spending time on optimizing for AI in this case. We are doing reputation management. And that's something actually for stakeholders. If you tell them, well, we do reputation management because there's information out there someone might find that you don't want to be out there about your company, then we should act now before everyone knows about it. So that's normally, if you talk about reputation management, stakeholders are really, really on board with it.
How do you measure the value, the financial value of reputation management?
That's a good question and a difficult one. To measure the value here is really hard because it's an emotional value. So it's more like seeing, well, look, that's the thing that's out there. What would it mean for the company and for you if this would be on the news tomorrow because some journalist found it? And that's really an emotional thing. You can't connect it so much with numbers. But it's also something really important.
That's a good point. It's a great way to answer. And obviously there's not necessarily any definitive answer to that. But if you don't know the answer to a question, then I guess the next best step is asking the person who's asked you the question another question. You know, well, what would it mean to you? You know, what would the value of this negative thing happening mean to you? And perhaps they can assist with finding the correct answer by asking more questions.
Yeah, maybe they can, if we say like, well, if this comes to the newspaper of the town and they publish it, what would it mean for your business? Well, maybe customers that were not sure buying of us go to the competition. Then you might make a number there. That's right. They might know best what the impact can be.
Yeah, and it's you're simply saying, you know, this might happen. You don't necessarily know. Perhaps other people in the business can help you as well, and perhaps it's a way of actually getting budget from other areas of the business, because there's overlap here. It's not just an SEO role, and there could be other departments in the business that are already working on this that would assist your insight on what's happening with AI in relation to what they do.
Yeah, especially if, like we said at the beginning, that's why we close the circle now, that we might need other departments. We might need the department that's actually doing the offering to know if the thing that's written on the website is correct. And if we need their input, we might need also well, are you on board with us? Can you give us some budget, some time of the people working in the department?
Talking about closing the circle, Dani, what's the key takeaway from the tip you shared today?
The key takeaway is to look at out there what's said about your company and about your client's company, and not just trying to generate new content, but also clean up what's already out there.
Dani Leitner is an independent SEO consultant. Find out more over at danileitner.ch. Dani, thanks so much for being part of SEO in 2026.
Thanks for inviting me.
I've been your host, David Bain. Get your copy of SEO in 2026, the book, over at SEOin2026.com.